Wait. What did you say?
Hmm?
You said that the coffee you had was left over from yesterday?
No, from today.
Oh, today.
Yes.
Okay, but like this morning or something? So you drink coffee that's like 12 hours old?
You see, the coffee was made at approximately 5:50 a.m. So,
Oh,
yeah,
wow. So this is quite old coffee.
very old coffee.
Oh, did you heat it up a little or something, or how did you go about
I
this
add I added it
practice?
with my milk that I was drinking for dinner. So it was like a lukewarm mocha with no sugar.
Oh man, I don't know. I don't know, man. That's not quite in my
I know you're not quite there yet. You will one day.
yeah, it's not my cup of tea,
Ha ha.
one might say. I mean, it's especially not my cup of tea because it's a cup of coffee, but you know. I did have a Keurig recently and it tasted all right. So,
Good. Uh, the,
our
the coffee machine that you bought for the school year, is that like a coffee pot or is that a Keurig?
that is a genuine coffee pot, which I still think tastes. I mean, it depends on the Keurig blend, I'm sure, but I still think that the genuine pot tastes better, in my opinion. Obviously, this
Yeah,
is all very opinion
I would
based.
I would agree with you.
Okay, so I'm happy to have the pot of coffee. I am actually happy because coffee makers are a lot cheaper than I expected them to be. I mean, I guess I should have talked about this in the episode where I actually talked about buying the coffee maker, but you know.
Yeah, because the demand, I guess, I don't know. The demand is higher for Keurigs, I think. I mean, it's because the more expensive, the more convenient. A lot of people want them, especially college
Well,
students.
even Keurigs aren't too bad though. I mean,
Yeah, but
they're like
they're more a little more pricey than the regular pot.
yeah. I mean, and you can get normal coffee makers with pots of coffee for like as cheap as like $15, which I think is crazy. But you know, in a good way because I think that it's awesome. This is the great thing about
America.
consumerism.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, that.
consumerism has well, okay, America being one of the most consumerist quotation marks nations in the world, but definitely not the only one. So I'm not going to act like this is America, greatest, best country. We're the only free country on earth. And it's like, no,
Oh yeah,
most of them
for
are
sure.
actually free now, but, whatever. Um, anyway, but the coffee pot, I just can't believe that we can make and sell these things and ship them to a store and have them stocked on the shelves and they still turn a profit off of a $15 coffee maker, which I think is a beautiful thing.
Speaking of consumerism, that reminds me of something that was mass produced in the movie that we watched this week.
Battle
The
suits?
battle suits.
I
Yes.
wish that battle suits were mass produced in real life because I would totally get one. All right, so speaking of mass produced battle suits, the movie we watched, of course, was The Edge of Tomorrow, or Live, Die, Repeat, or that Tom Cruise movie with Emily Blunt in it and they're
Yes.
fighting aliens. This movie had some difficulty with its title.
I had a lot of difficulty. Like I just looked it up a while ago on online, and it was some other like it was under "Live on the Edge." I'm like,
Real? I've never seen that one
yeah. I'm
before.
like it was on Amazon. Like if I wanted to buy like a actual DVD, or actually I might have been looking up the no, I was looking up the director for this movie and all the movies
Uh
he's
huh.
done, and for Edge of Tomorrow, a picture came up, with Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt saying "Live on the Edge" in all bold on the front. I'm like, are they still trying to decide what to call this movie? It's such a shame because it's such a good movie.
So all the rumors that this movie is getting a sequel are actually false.
There's
What
just
they're doing is they're just renaming it continuously,
yes. Oh,
and then they just will repackage and resell it, but
I
it's the same thing.
I hope they don't make a sequel to this movie. And if they do, it's got to be like a Toy Story 2 or 3 because that was a miracle.
Yeah, this movie does not. It certainly doesn't need a sequel. I feel like if this movie does get a sequel, it's probably a bit of Hollywood meddling. I don't know. Maybe it is genuinely inspired, but I feel like maybe if it's a sequel, it's probably just an attempt at some more cash, which is interesting because this movie did well in the box office,
It
but
did.
it wasn't like a super hit though.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that they would make this a sequel, but I guess they'll make a sequel out of anything that's mildly successful, especially since this was very well rated. So who
Hmm.
knows? Um, I was thinking about the sequel to this movie because I was thinking, obviously the main point of this movie. I think I'm gonna try and do a non-spoiler review for the first few minutes of the podcast, and then go into spoilers. Once we've given our review. Which I mean, at this point, I feel like everybody should have seen this movie.
Yeah.
But just in case, we'll just give our impressions and recommendation, and then go into spoilers. However, I don't think it's not a spoiler because you can tell from all the trailers. I think most of what's given away in the trailers, I think doesn't really count as spoilers. The whole point of this movie is that he repeats the day over and over again, that he keeps living the same day, and we'll go into why that happens when we get to spoilers, but that's the main concept, is he keeps living the same day, Tom Cruise, over and over again. And the problem is, though, is like, in the end, when they win, I don't think that's too much of a spoiler either. Like, how do you explain away, like, what's the purpose of him having, what's the purpose of the sequel to this movie, I guess? And they talk about, like, oh, there might be more of these aliens out there.
Lame.
But like, that would be really lame. Yeah, exactly. If they did the same thing just over and over again. Like, what if they came back again? And it's like, no. The one interesting concept that I think they could potentially make a good movie out of, but I still think it would not be as good, but maybe. We'll see. I don't want to write it off too soon. The one thing that I could see maybe being interesting, but still probably not interesting, is, first of all, they'd have to come up with some new concept. Like, they couldn't just do the repeating the day over and over again, because I feel like that would be disappointing, because then it would just be the same as this movie, more or less.
Yeah.
So I feel like they'd have to come up with a new sort of twist to it, because if it was just a normal action movie, that would be kind of lame. And if it was just repeating the day over and over again, that would be sort of lame. So I feel like they've got to introduce something new to it.
But it's like that was such an essential part of the movie. Just like if you made a Groundhog Day too, like it would be really weird if it wasn't a day being repeated. But at the same time, if it was a day being repeated, it would be really
it would just
weird.
be like the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
It's like, why is this repeating all over again?
it's like a
But
not win-win. It's like a lose-lose.
yeah, but maybe if they figure out some other interesting thing to do with time shenanigans that's not just repeating the same day over and over again, I don't know. But what I was thinking about is, it's kind of implied. So these aliens, what happens is, at the very beginning of the movie, we find out that these aliens are from an asteroid that hits the Earth. It's a smaller asteroid. It's not like, it comes down and like blows up, half a continent or something. It just comes down and, hits and craters, whatever, somewhere in Germany. And the aliens get out of the asteroid and start attacking and taking over parts of Europe. And so what we are told later in this movie, there's a guy who has a theory that's kind of offhandedly mentioned, that's like, oh, what if there's just millions of those asteroids just floating around in space, and they're all just out there, and it's like the perfect world-conquering machine that you just let all these things float around, and they just have to find a planet and crash down on it, and then they just take over. And I was like, that's kind of an interesting idea. And so what I'm assuming is, like, this, first of all, this species, these aliens, don't seem entirely natural. Like, they seem to be part machine and part, alive. So they don't seem like they're just like a naturally occurring species, so to speak. So I'm assuming, what my personal like mental theory is that this is like a galaxy conquering force that some higher alien species engineered, and then they just released asteroids throughout the galaxy, and they're like, oh, it might take millions of years for all these asteroids to fly around, but we don't care because we're like super superior and we got all the time in the world, and we're just going to let these things conquer the galaxy for us. And every time they find a habitable planet and take it over for us, then they can just let us know, and we'll fly over there and we'll set up shop on it. Like, that's my theory, that there's some big civilization out there that uses these to conquer planets.
That's kind of weird. Like, continue.
Well, that's the only thing I can think of that would like explain away this, and then also set up for a sequel. Because if this wasn't a sequel, I wouldn't be bothering to come up with these theories. But since this movie is getting a sequel, I have to try and figure out, okay, what would that sequel be? So my idea for what the sequel might be would be like, maybe if there's a this higher civilization that has engineered these creatures, and they are like, oh, you defeated our ultimate planet conquering thing. We need to come down in person and put a stop to you because you guys are a threat because you defeated our ultimate weapon or something. I
guess that is a plausible theory, except that I feel like the whole like idea, I think, behind that species is that they're like a perfectly evolved species. Like, they were like over millions and very likely just billions of years, because this species is so advanced, and the fact that it would evolve by running into like other like species and civilizations and destroying them, and then of course evolving from that. So that's a long process. But the point is, they've like evolved. I don't know if they kind of feel like engineered to me. They're like a giant nervous system. I don't know if they didn't really strike me as like robots, if that's what you're implying. I don't know.
Well, they have some sort of like weapons. Obviously, they have some sort of launchers where we see them shooting little things. I don't know, they feel, maybe it is like a naturally, so to speak, like it's just a perfectly naturally growing organism. But then if it is, I don't see the explanation of like, so they started seeding themselves in asteroids, like, because obviously they started out on a planet and then they decided to seed themselves into asteroids or something, and I don't know how that would have worked exactly. It's an interesting species. I like this alien species. They are fairly unique, I would say.
Yeah, they're not like in Cowboys and Aliens. We talked about the two types of aliens that we see, like the kind of smart, kind of humanistic ones that have the giant head and big eyes, and then we have the other kind of alien species, which is a lot more kind of like this, the predator, but this blend is in Edge of Tomorrow feels a lot more like, not like Predator, but it feels kind of like just some kind of like straight up like evolved like animal creature thing that's like not an alien but like another life form, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not like, it's like it almost doesn't feel like an alien, but like some other kind of just like animal that's out there that has like dropped on Earth, which I guess is what an alien is. But I guess
they're kind of interesting.
I'm trying
they're
to
kind
create
of like
a distinction between, I don't know, like
they're almost like, I guess my description of them is almost like wolf squids. Because they're all tentacly and stuff. They've got all these different appendages that like fly around super fast, but they also have like almost like a wolfy or lion head.
That's what we'll call them,
to speak.
Wolf squids.
Wolf squids. So
right.
Tom Cruise is fighting wolf squids with Emily Blunt.
Yes, but another idea about the sequel. Actually, this thought just occurred to me. It might be able to work. After this, I feel like we should actually talk about the movie. But
No, we should just keep talking about theoretical sequels.
Yes. If you made the movie about Emily Blunt at the Battle of Verdun, which is like happens before Edge of Tomorrow takes place,
a prequel,
okay. and you hear a prequel, and you hear her story and the person she met, and of course she did not destroy the Omega at the end, so it would be a great setup for Edge of Tomorrow.
If that was the first movie and this was the sequel, then I think that would be cool. But I feel like since we already know exactly what happens in that first movie...
I mean, same thing with Star Wars.
But first of all, the Star Wars prequels were not that great. And second of all, though, I think most importantly, the distinction between the Star Wars prequels and the potential prequel to this is that in the Star Wars prequels, regardless of whether they were good or bad, I'm just going to completely ignore whether they were good or bad or not, and, leave a review on that for another time. But, like, if you watch the original trilogy, you really do not know very much about what happens in the quote-unquote lead up to that, or the prequels. because you're like, okay, if you think about if you've only seen the original trilogy, what do you really know? You know that, spoiler alert, Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father.
Gasp.
I know, I'm sorry I said that on air. You know that there was this thing called the Clone Wars, but you have no idea what that was, other than it was probably a war and it involved some sort of clones, which, amusingly enough, originally in one of the early scripts or something for episode 5, or, technically episode 2, because chronological order and blah, 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 blah. But, The Empire Strikes Back, the original script for The Empire Strikes Back, apparently Lando was supposed to be like an old clone, which I personally think was fantastic and was what they should have done, because then every single clone trooper in the prequels would have been Lando Calrissian, basically, and they would have all been like these sleazy,
Yes.
like too cool people. That would have been hilarious. But anyway, so the that's basically all you know, and you know that this empire rose, but you don't really know how the empire rose.
But,
it's just like, oh, the empire's here.
See,
As opposed to in this movie, they kind of explain a lot about what happens to her. She's like, oh, there was a guy named Henrix that I was in love with, and I watched him die 300 times, and I fought, and I got better, just like you did in this movie, and then it was at Verdun, and the Omega let us win, and I thought the Omega was there, and it wasn't. And it's like, okay, what?
The thing, I feel like why this could work, and this will serve as a good transition into the actual movie now, but I feel like, because Edge of Tomorrow is not, the movie is not focused and all about, like, the plot, as in, like, the fact that there's aliens on Earth, and humanity needs to overcome these aliens. The focus of the movie is on the development of Tom Cruise's character. That's really what it's all about, because he lives and dies each day. You see his huge character arc,
and he gets to be a better person,
which really is why this movie shines so brightly, I think, at least in my eyes, is because this character development is amazing. And the thing with Emily, if you make a movie about the Battle of Verdun, yeah, you know what happens, but you can actually see how she got to the place she is in Edge of Tomorrow. And why is she so hardened and understand,
I guess, but I feel like it would be like a very similar movie to this movie, and so I'm not sure if it's one that we really need to see.
Yeah, but
because I feel like her arc probably wouldn't be as big if you think about it.
It wouldn't be. It would be like it's like she's about to change, and then she like gets hardened or something because she realizes that the Omega isn't there and that her boyfriend died, and now she's very hardened and she's depressed because she knows they're gonna lose. You know what I mean? So it would be like a almost developing to a new character and then slam shut, dramatic end, pause, suspense held for Edge of Tomorrow. Of course, none of these things should probably happen because we both agree that there shouldn't be a sequel. But if there had to be a sequel, these are the theories that we're creating. So, yeah. But anyways, with do you have anything more to say on that? On
the sequel note, probably not. Yeah. I guess I'll just say what we kind of have already been thinking, which is this movie doesn't need a sequel, but if they do one, hopefully it's good.
Now that we spent 15 minutes talking about the thing that should not happen.
Yes, exactly. So now let's actually talk about the movie. Yes. So we like this movie. Get that out of the way, right?
Yes, we both really like this movie. As usual, I probably like this a lot more than you.
I don't know. I mean, I really, really like this movie a lot. I do have quite a few nitpicks watching this now for I don't even know what time this is. I've watched this quite a few times.
Same.
And so at this point, I guess I can go through and definitely see a lot of the little details where it's like, hey, why would you do that? I don't know.
Yeah, I noticed a few of those as I was going through. But
there's nothing that totally breaks the movie for me, though.
Yeah,
no movie is perfect, and there is nothing in this movie that totally broke it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there were definitely some moments that felt like, this seems awfully contrived. But, like, that's mostly toward the end, which I think is kind of unfortunate that the ending could have been a bit stronger than it was. But, like, the first two acts of this movie are very good, in my opinion. Like, very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's the third act that really is still fine, but, like,
Yeah,
starts to
I
show
think
some cracks.
I think that the main flaw with the third act is the fact when they're driving in the car and he sees the Omega. He sees what it actually is. Why didn't Emily Blunt kill him right away, like right there?
Well, here's the actually, I took some notes on that, and I guess we're into spoilers now, so here we
Okay, yeah,
go.
we're spoilers.
Anyway, spoilers. But the fact of the matter is, what they should have done is as soon as the general handed them the device in his office, they should have just stabbed it in Tom Cruise's leg right there. Tom Cruise could have been sitting in the office, and Emily Blunt could have just kept her gun pointed at the general. And then as soon as Tom Cruise is sees the vision and he comes back and he's like, "Oh, I know where it is. I remember." Then Emily Blunt could just shoot him right in the office, and they would have never had to risk escaping or anything like that, which is one of the most major things. And then the other most major thing about that scene is not Henrik, sorry. What's the name of the mechanic / physicist or whatever?
Ooh, I don't remember.
I have it written down, I think. Hold on, let me just look.
Oh, I know it. As soon as you say it, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah.
Carter.
That's right, Dr. Carter. With
Dr.
psychiatric delusions.
Yes. So he says that they're like, oh, they didn't think my device. They thought it was a bunch of baloney, and then that's why they threw me out here and didn't want to let me work on physicists stuff anymore. And I'm like, okay, so if that's true and they don't think the device works and they think he's just kind of crazy, why does the general keep the device locked up in a safe in his office?
Yeah, that was another one. And I was like, because I think when they decided that they needed to go get this other half of the machine,
mm-hmm.
I was like, they never explicitly said, and I think this is just for the sake of the movie, but they never explicitly said where the other half of the machine is. Maybe they did, but the fact that it's in the general's office is really weird. I was like, I think that this is the first time, kind of at that moment when they decided they should go to the general's office. I realized for the first time out of all the times I've seen this movie, the thought just occurred to me. I'm like, wait a second. What in the world are they doing? Why are they even going to the general's office?
Why does the general keep this machine that he thinks is a bunch of junk in his office?
Yeah, and honestly, it probably should have been either destroyed or in some kind of lab somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, somewhere that they wouldn't have to.
But to keep the movie
talk to the general,
to keep the movie moving along, which I think is a just cause to put it in the general's office, because it's a movie and the plot needs to move quickly. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I buy it. It's in the general's office.
Well, it's basically the whole reason why it's there is so that way they can get. Excuse me. The reason why it's there is so that way they can get caught, and Cage can get a blood transfusion.
Yep.
And then he loses the power, which adds it should add at least some intensity to the final scene of this movie.
I don't think.
But
yeah, go ahead.
But what bugs me about the final scene of this movie is that up to this point, because Cage could die all the time, and so they were all right with killing him all the time, is that he died whenever something that realistically should have killed him, it would kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they would just restart the day. But as soon as he loses that power to restart the day every time he dies, he turns into Action Hero Man, and they have him hanging onto the side of
flying
the airship.
Through the Louvre. That's that one scene crashing through the Louvre. I'm like, oh my gosh.
You're dead.
You're dead.
Maybe if he was still in his suit. If he was still in his battle suit, I would buy it, because it's okay, the suit probably has some protective stuff. But they have him just in normal clothes with a bulletproof vest on.
And every time
it's you're dead.
When I first saw that scene in theaters, I thought the same thing. I'm like, ooh. But you see, the thing is, that could have easily been fixed if he just stayed inside the ship. And I think,
or if they could have just kept him in his suit. If they kept him in his suit, I would have been fine with it.
It's very important they did not keep him in his suit, and I'll explain that later. But
I disagree, but okay, we'll get into that later. Yeah.
The fact that he could have so easily been inside his ship shows me that this is probably just a way to create suspense in the last act to show him flying around.
But it defeats suspense. It really doesn't create suspense.
In reality, because he can so easily be inside of his ship, I'm just imagining that he was if he wasn't just inside his the ship, he would survive. So I'm like, okay. The point is, he gets inside the Louvre because it's a movie to make it more dramatic than it should. But he realistically could get inside the Louvre, so I'm okay with it. Again.
Yeah, I guess. I feel like they should have just had him be in the ship, and I feel like they could have made that every bit as dramatic because they could have just showed the, other mimics closing in behind them, and now they're in the ship, and they've got to get out of the ship and try and run away and run from the mimics before they kill them. And I feel like that would have been just as good at creating suspense, but, that's just my opinion, and I was not a screenwriter on this film.
Yeah.
For some reason. I don't know why I wasn't asked.
Wow.
But...
Wow. The egotism right now is just so high. Yeah, but then I think so. Maybe we'll get to the suit thing later, explaining that. But how I want to say this. What I really like about this movie is that whether this was intentional or not intentional, I think I brought this up last time. In the last podcast, maybe, or technically 2 ago, because Jason Bourne was 2 podcasts ago.
Yeah.
But there are so many biblical references and nods to throughout the movie that I just cannot ignore it. And whether it's they did not intend for this to happen, and it just did, it works. And whether they intended this to be, it still works. So I'm pretty happy. By the way, was this a book?
This was a book.
Okay,
yes.
yeah.
There was a graphic novel, I believe, in
just like Cowboys
Japan.
and Aliens.
Yes, and it was written in 2004, and it was called All You Need Is Kill.
Huh.
And the author, and I think this is pretty clear watching this movie, the author was very much inspired by experiences playing video games and the idea of you're playing the level and you get a little distance and then something kills you, but now the next time when you respawn that same thing is going to happen, and so now you're prepared to deal with that thing, and then when you get to that point in the level again, you defeat that because it's going to happen, and you get a little further, but then something else kills you, and you're like, oh, well, now there's that. And so you can definitely get a sense of that during the sort of middle act of this movie.
Yes.
There's a lot of, I remember that this is going to happen, and so we got to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious to hear what you have to say about these whole biblical parallels or references or whatever to say, because I've seen this movie 6 or 7 times, and I personally have never noticed. So I'm curious. I'm interested to hear what you have to say. So if you'd like to open us in prayer, Paul.
Dear Heavenly Father, please bless this here conversation that I might blow my.
Please bless this thy battle suit that thou hast made, that I might use it to blow thine enemies to tiny bits in thy mercy.
In thy mercy, yes.
Yes.
Well, the first 2, I guess, are kind of obvious if you think about it, but the whole fact that the thing that saves humanity is the aliens' blood is just screaming at me parallels with Jesus' blood covering, saving humanity. The fact that it's all revolving around this blood that saves you seems very significant to me. And also, in the beginning of this movie, Bill Cage, Tom Cruise, of course, he's very self-centered. You get this whole, character development thing, and he becomes very self-sacrificial by the end of the movie. And really, he's not even, to the end of the movie, he's more concerned about knowing Emily Blunt, or what's her name in the movie? I should use her character's name. The Full Metal
Rita, the Full Metal. That's her name.
Which, by the way, is a reference to Full Metal Jacket, the movie that Tom Cruise was in, which I think.
And it's also they call their suits jackets and Full Metal. I might say, but anyway, her name is Rita Vertasky.
That's right, Vertasky.
Vertasky.
Rita. So and basically he has
British lady.
Basically he has to he has to die to himself. Which the biggest 2 things are the blood, and then baptism, which of course the
baptism is just, I feel like that's just the sergeant.
He said that in the beginning, but you actually see it. baptism is it's kind of this idea that one man goes down and another man comes up. So one man goes down into death, like he does every day. He dies. Lieutenant Cage dies, or whatever his rank was. Goes down into death, goes down into water, and comes up a new man. At the end of the movie, he comes up a very changed, selfless man who has saved humanity. Um, and there's a scene, which I think this is why I think losing his suit was so important, is because there's that scene he's falling down in the water,
Mm-hmm.
like baptism going in the water, and he's in his suit. Now before that, before that moment in the movie, you see that, and especially the very beginning, you see that Cage uses, which I think is a brilliant last name because that reflects what he is selling, a cage. These suits are like a crutch to face the aliens. They're a crutch for courage. They're saying, it's a whole idea of you can do it. This is going to be easy win. You just can walk in,
Well,
slaughter them.
is a gun a crutch for courage? Because it's just a
No,
tool.
but this is like a highly this the suit is like much more than just a regular tool or a gun. It's like
But a gun is much better than a sword, which they could just give them
which
swords.
they
You know
actually
what I
did.
mean?
At least Rita had a sword thing.
Well, Rita has a sword, which is a reference to the graphic novel because
Okay.
her character uses a battle axe in the graphic
Hmm.
novel.
But anyways, the point is, what was I saying? The suit is used as a crutch. And because I mean you can tell it because a lot of the people going in to fight don't strike you as they're preparing for combat, they're preparing for battle, they're full of courage. They tend to be these people that think it's going to be easy because they are told that their suits are so amazing. So
Well, it's also because they're told that they're not going to be facing much resistance, that the enemy is not.
yeah, exactly.
That,
And so I mean before because you see that no one has been able to stop these mimics,
uh
these
huh.
these wolf squids. Um,
Yes, the wolf squids.
no one is able to stop them. Of course, you got the Chinese and the Russian militaries that are mentioned. I assume they just have regular, guns,
Well,
ammunition.
it seems like because they're all united in the
Yeah,
UDF,
yeah,
the United Defense Force. So I assume that like most of the militaries now have soldiers wearing these suits, even if maybe not their entire army
yeah.
is composed of them.
So,
Is my
but the
thought.
point is, the mimics have spread across all of Europe by this point, and now there's
Most of Europe. Most of
most of
Europe.
Europe, and now there's this change. There's this key moment, which of course is the introduction of the suit, which is apparently a new idea as we get the notion in the beginning of the movie. So
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you see that eventually the suit is unnecessary. All that you need is to be a good soldier is not the weapons you use, but the courage you have and the heart you have. That's what creates the good
Well,
soldier. Um, and so that's why you see at the end, Cage doesn't use the helmet. He says the helmet is just a distraction. By the end of the movie, he's not even in a suit. He's just using his gun. But again, the point he goes down in the water. This is reflecting the baptism thing. He goes down the water. Before he was a coward, did not have courage, selling this suit, the more he sold the suit, the more he felt safe from battle. He pushed himself away. And so that kind of reflected his former life. And as he had to let go of the suit under the water so that he could come up the new person that he has become, who is full of courage and concern for others. And that's like a huge transformational scene right there, which I thought was weird because that scene when he's falling down sinking in the water is very long and extended. And the first time I saw that, I thought that was very odd that they would point this scene out so much because it looks
mm-hmm.
like he's like the bottom. He hits the bottom of the river and he's in his suit and he's still on one breath.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically speaking, I think he'd probably drown because he still has to get out of the suit. But
Uh-huh.
but so I'm like, okay, they're making some kind of point out of the scene, or they're just making it super dramatic. I don't know, which they're probably just making it dramatic, but you can make.
We might just be reading into this way too much, but yes,
Yeah,
continue.
which is what the problem is, I think, with this theory I have. But the thing is that it works. It works so well if you look into it. Anyways,
If you just imagine hard enough, you
but you
can
don't.
see
But
it.
you don't have to imagine that hard. You just see it's all
Okay.
right there. Um,
Okay.
anyway, so he goes down. Let's go of the suit, and that's like the baptism. And at the very beginning, the general is like, you'll be baptized. You will be born again. Baptized, born again.
Yeah.
Um, and so that
In the
is
flames of glorious combat.
so that
I envy you, Cage.
and so that's the whole thing. You go down into death, which he dies to himself again to save humanity. He dies. He has to notice as Christians we have to die to ourselves every day. It's kind of this nice reflection of wow, he has to die all the time. And then there's some other iconic scenes. So first there's the blood thing. The blood was necessary
Hmm.
for the salvation of humanity. And then you got two, the baptism, which really is the transformation that happens, one moving from one man to another man. And then third, there are a lot of like iconic scenes, which I mentioned one already, which is when he's sinking down into the river. And there's also another scene when Cage is with Rita in the barn, in the barn house thing, and he's giving her coffee. And in the background, in between Rita and Cage, you see a picture of Jesus on the wall. It's not focused on, but I thought it was funny. It was right there, like
Okay.
I think kind of reflecting, you know, who Cage is kind of like becoming or symbolizing. So there's a picture of like Jesus in the background. And of course, the last scene when their mega explodes and all the mimics like die, they freeze, whatever, they shrivel up, become the old shriveled selves they are. Um,
Phantom Menace style.
yes, like little tree roots. You see, all the black blood comes up, of course, and covers Cage again. There's just that scene that look, this is the blood. This is what's giving him life. This is what's giving humanity, that day over again. And then just the fact that Cage's last name is, I mean, Bill's last name is Cage, um, reflecting the machine. And then another iconic scene I thought was pretty good was when they're actually going to the barn house before they get there. And there's a scene when Rita is not in her suit anymore, like the battery died. And then Cage is still in his suit, and his battery dies, and he gets out of it and walks away. It's this nice, like 40-second scene, 30-second scene, and he's walking up, and then they walk away from the suit, but the camera still stays on the suit as they walk away, and it kind of
Hmm.
zooms in on it, like, look at, he's not using his cage, he's out of his cage. He is now, see how this suit is not necessary. It's a way to hide from the fear or the reality that they're trying to face, knowing that to be a
I
good,
guess
you
it's
need to be a
I
good
guess
soldier, which is kind of what
I
Rita was explaining to him when she's training him. She's like, you have to remember, but you can't just remember. You have to know how to kill these things. And that's part of being the good soldier. You can't just depend on your weapon to do everything for you. You yourself have to use your weapon for what it is. Use your tool for what it is. You know what I mean?
hmm
And really, much that's kind of all I have to say about those references. But those things have always jumped out at me, and that's why I think I love this movie so much. Not just the fact that like I can make these references, but because that the message is so strong through it, and the message is reflected so clearly. I really enjoy that aspect. So, Paul,
okay.
Paul, Paul Rant done.
Yeah, so last episode was Paul Hine ranting about Star Trek, and this episode will be Paul Kaufman ranting about Edge of
Yes.
Tomorrow. But that is interesting that you bring up that. I guess I had never thought about it in that way. I feel like some of what you said there I think is interesting, and I would say that there could be some symbolism there. Um, some of it I don't necessarily think was probably intentional,
Yeah,
but some of it could
definitely.
be.
But like,
Um,
I know that, which
yeah,
but
I and
it
this
works
this
though. So I'm like, oh my
yeah,
god.
this is all a subjective thing where it's like, what do you get out of the movie? And ultimately, I mean, as much as sometimes I hate to say this, art and media does belong to its consumers. Once it is put out there, it is no longer just something that the creators own. It kind of is owned by everyone who views it, and everybody will interpret it in a different way. So, and I think that's part of the value of art, actually, is it can show us things about the world and about reality and about ourselves.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that the thing for me that I feel like is probably I would agree with is maybe the baptism scene, because again we kind of have a big deal made out of that, sort of sarcastically at the beginning of the movie almost, where the sergeants made a big deal out of it, to Cage, and like you're going to be born again, which is partially just maybe setting up for the fact that he's going to be continuously reliving the same day. But then also when you bring up the fact that this final scene that seems kind of weird, where it's like spending a lot of
Hmm.
time showing him
With
in the
him sinking in the
water.
river.
Yeah, that maybe was intentional, showing that he's sort of being reborn. Maybe it's not directly supposed to be like a Christian allegory, but it might be just playing off of
Yeah.
that theme,
I mean, of
which
course,
is
you can use, even if the directors aren't a Christian, you can use a Christian allegory to make a point.
Yeah, and a lot of people do. A lot of creative people have used biblical allegories before because
Yeah.
the Bible resonates very well throughout culture because it has affected really civilization for a very long time, and a lot of the ideas and a lot of the stories are very deeply ingrained, even though some people probably don't even realize some of the things that they know that are technically biblical in origin.
Hmm.
But the that's all interesting points, I guess, that you raise up. I feel like the biggest thing that I still disagree with, though, and this will kind of get into, I think I know why we disagree on this point, um, is the suit and the way you view the suit versus the way I view the suit.
Hmm.
And I think this is not, again, it might be that the filmmakers were trying to convey what you were conveying, which is you don't need this boost, so to speak. I feel like when I look at the suit, I don't view it as a crutch or as like some sort of way to hide from your enemy. I just view that as that's a better tool. Of course I'm just going to use the best tool. Like if I'm a soldier, I want to have the best thing. And it's not because I'm a coward or whatever, just because it makes sense if I'm going to be fighting a war. I just want to have whatever the best
Hmm.
equipment is
Yeah.
available
So,
to me to
and
fight.
that's good. But like, so like, what makes a soldier? If you take a random civilian with no training and hand him a weapon, hand him a gun, is he a soldier, or is the guy who has gone through training and had experience and has a weapon, is he the soldier? I feel like
I see what you
I
say.
feel like a
Yeah.
lot of the people, a lot of the troops that you saw in the movie were not soldiers by that definition. They were ordinary people given minimal training, which is what they say is what
At the beginning of
how
the
they
movie,
advertise.
yep.
Like with minimal training, we can give all these people weapons, and they can go out and do amazing things. But the thing is, they're not soldiers. They're people with weapons. You know what I mean?
I feel like part of that was definitely felt like as a sort of desperation thing where they're just
Definitely.
trying to like
Yeah.
press people into the military. Like, okay, we need lots of soldiers because these things are insane, and so here, just take these guns and take these suits, and we just need people to put in them, and there you go, off to the front lines. And I felt like that was part of the world that they were building. I do feel like some of the things were a bit weird when they show like these military bases, because like there was so little discipline that I felt like that was kind of weird. Like obviously we see Sergeant Farrell and he's like, "Oh, everybody give me some push-ups and stuff," but like
Hmm.
there's like a Griff or whatever his name is, and he's got his Hawaii shirt on like all the time, and it's like, okay, they should at
Rambo.
least have like uniforms, like you are a soldier now, and this is not even part of the whole, like this would actually help with the rapid training, which is like like you take all these people, and even if they only get like a week and a half or 2 weeks of training or whatever it is, something that's very short compared to current military standards, but might be all they give them in this kind of hour of need. Like at least you bring them in, and you give, this is part of the whole psychology and part of the whole reason why the military does things like this. You give everybody the same haircut, or do whatever you need to do. You cut everybody's hair short, and then you give everybody the same uniform, and you build them as a team, and you're like, you are a team, you are a unit. And it's this almost like this psychological thing is by giving everybody this uniform, it's like you're not just, it's almost like a rite of passage in a way. And like it's almost like when you put on a uniform like that, it's like, it's almost like, wow, it's like you're not a civilian anymore. It's like, I'm a soldier now. And it's like, even if you are not a soldier, and like even if you've just been recruited, I feel like, but that's almost like a way of like, this is for real. Like that this is my armor.
Hmm.
Like this is my sword and shield, and this is what I'm going into battle with. And I feel like that was like kind of lacking in this, even though I like a lot of the world of this movie and the world this movie is built. I definitely felt like, why are you letting these guys just wear like normal clothing like
Yeah.
on the day of the
And
battle? Or
sometimes
they,
not even
the fat
clothing.
guy is the fat, yeah, exactly, the fat guy who's naked in the suit, which is like
Just want to be free, man.
funny. It's funny, but it's also like,
Hey,
really?
well, honestly, every soldier today is naked under his uniform. So I mean,
They're all naked. under their
Oh my
clothes.
gosh, this is
Yeah,
terrible.
but
I bet you're naked under your clothes, Paul.
I am
Oh, the
very naked
shame.
under my clothes. Thankfully, we don't have our webcams on, or else this would be very embarrassing. Um, so that was definitely. There were some things that I really liked and some things I didn't like. I liked that at the beginning of this movie, once Cage has been a coward and arrested and thrown into the middle of the army base, we see that this military base is actually Heathrow Airport
Yep.
that has been converted because the world is really screwed up right now, and so it's kind of nice to see like a wartime world. They did a very good job of creating this sort of world at war
Mm-hmm.
feeling in a way where it's like, oh, this is Heathrow, which is a big civilian airport, and the military's just totally taken it over. That was a fun thing to see, or an interesting thing to see.
Those things like that help you know that this was probably a book, some kind of novel before it was a movie. When you see like little things like that, I don't.
Well, actually, though, the novel was set in Asia,
Oh, really?
so it
Oh,
wasn't set in
that
Europe.
would make sense considering it was an Asian.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
Japanese graphic novel. But what's interesting that we're having this conversation, and what's interesting is, and this is, I'm sorry if I'm butchering this to anybody who knows more about culture than I do, but I realize that you are looking at this, and the suit is not exactly necessary, or the suit is just a object, and what's really important is your the person and their heart and their soul and whatever. That's what's really the key to all this, which I sort of agree with, but I also feel like, well, there's no reason why you can't use the suit.
Yeah, which is fine. Like, the suit is morally neutral, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
To
because
compare
like
it,
I guess I look
the
at this
suit
as
is
like,
neutral, but if you solely depend on the suit by itself as a
yeah,
crutch and don't depend on the person you're putting in the to use the weapon, then it becomes a
yeah,
problem.
yeah, but I feel like, what if you had a knight, so to speak, like a medieval knight in this movie, and like then in the end he has to take off his armor? Would that feel the same? Like, because you almost feel like the armor is just part of the person. Like they're just like, that's just what they happen to be wearing because it's just part of their
Hmm.
uniform or whatever. So I feel like, but that again though, let me break this down. I feel like you're actually approaching this, amusingly enough, in more of like the way that a lot of I see Asian cultures approaching this sort of thing, which is that, and again, I'm not trying to butcher anything. This is my limited knowledge
You
of
racist.
culture. Yeah, I'm so sorry. But so I'm sorry if I'm misstating things, but this is just my interpretations or my observations, so they might not be entirely correct, but whatever. This, I feel like a lot of Asian culture is more about like the person and like the discipline of the person and what the person can do, and not necessarily with the tools, as opposed to like if I'm an American, and the way I look at if I see there's a soldier with a gun and a battle suit or whatever, it's almost like the way that Americans tend to view firearms or like military equipment is like those things are empowering things. Like they convey power upon an individual. Like you
Mm.
are given this power, this object gives you power.
Mm.
As opposed to the way that I feel maybe certain Asian cultures view this, which the only reason I'm bringing this up, of course, is because it was a graphic novel written in Japan, is because I feel like they view it as more of like, these are just things that people use, but really what's important is like the discipline and heart of the person. Again, I could be wrong on this, but this is just my third party interpretation. So it is interesting that we're viewing these in different ways, because I view it as like, I view the suit as like a major part of this movie, and it's a cool idea. And so to me, it's almost slightly disappointing. Like, oh, why isn't he in the suit at the end of this movie?
Hmm.
Like, wouldn't it be cool if he was in the suit? But I get what you're saying, and I'm actually okay with Cage not being in the suit, because it's like, okay, well, whatever, he was going to drown. But one thing that was weird to me is why isn't Rita in the suit?
Yes, now that you mention it,
She's just
yeah.
arbitrarily not in a suit at the end. Like, he gets out of the water. We understand why he's not in the suit because he almost drowns. He gets out of the water. He pulls himself out and he finds Rita, and Rita's just like there. And she's like, I'm not in my suit. Whatever.
Yeah, she's
It's
cool.
like, because of course, if your suit, because of course, like, Cage would have stayed in the suit if he had not been in that situation. Because, logically, like, it's like you wouldn't just take off the suit for no reason. If you're told, like, okay, well, you can either wear the suit and the suit has, like, more armor and it's got a better gun and it's got, like, a grenade launcher, or you can just, have this shotgun and just run around with this shotgun. Like, of course, I feel like any rational person will probably be like, well, I'm gonna wear the suit probably because that seems like a good idea. So like, if he was given the choice, he would have probably stayed in the suit. But
Mhm.
he chose. But obviously, situation forced
I guess
him.
it's more like the movie showing you that he does not need his suit, or he is more than his suit.
Yeah,
Even though he probably would have preferred to be in the suit. Um,
yeah. I love how we're
yeah.
going through this movie backwards. We started talking about the sequel, and then we started talking about the end, and now we're sort of talking about we're getting towards the beginning of the movie as we talk about it longer. So this movie's a lot of fun with the whole repeating and all the different
Okay, yeah,
things,
definitely.
and him getting killed repeatedly and then learning. That's
Which
probably the best part of this
And one
movie.
of the problems I had was like really in every instance that he died, I'm like, would that really kill him? Like the one time he gets run over by a bus, I'm like, okay, that would have hurt, but
That
would
would
that kill him? Like
I
if it
think.
went over
Well,
his
that's not
head.
just a. That's like a big truck. Actually, that's a military truck. That thing probably weighs a lot.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to bet that would probably kill him.
Oh,
Obviously, all the times he gets shot
yeah.
would definitely kill him in the head specifically.
Yes.
um, there's obviously the mimics would always kill
But
him.
just the
You
thought that
know.
the amount of times that this guy is dying is just like extraordinary. Like you don't even know. Like you can tell like there's some scenes that go by in the movie. Like one scene, once
There's
like
some scenes that are implied that he's
yes.
already done it, but we haven't actually
And
seen
there's
it.
like one scene and the next scene, and then you can safely assume that in between those two scenes, he has died like 500 times because this routine that he has down is almost so spotless.
Uh-huh.
It's just like insane. Like when
I
yeah,
I personally buy it, like, because I feel like
like
part of
like
it's
really he never bled out once out of all those 5,000 times he died. I don't know.
whatever. I mean, I personally think it worked well.
It
That's just
does.
me
It does.
though.
Yeah.
And it's all right if he bleeds out. It's only if he takes other people's blood is the key. So they have to get him to a hospital and they have to inject him with blood. So it's like it's not just him bleeding out that they have to.
He's bleeding out. Da,
Yeah.
da, da, da.
There's a lot of World War II
Oh, yes.
reminiscence in this movie, like tons of it.
Tons of it. And that's what it was meant to be. Like it was released on D-Day, June 6th.
Okay, there's that, and then there's also this movie was essentially like a modern D-Day because
Yep.
they're storming the beach in
Which I think
France.
was also June 6th. Like in the movie,
Yeah,
it
it
was
was.
supposed to be like June 6th. It was like
Oh, it was supposed to be June
I
6th in the
I
movie,
think
in
so.
addition to that being the release date. Okay, so this is literally D-Day.
Maybe not, but the Battle of Verdun,
But
reference to World War One.
yeah, yep. And then they also talk about the name of the operation is Operation Downfall, which is the code name for the plotted U.S. invasion of Japan in World War II, but that invasion, of course, never took place because
Yep.
we just nuked them.
And then there's
Um,
they call Rita the Angel of Verdun, which in World War One there was a battle. It was the battle of at like Mam or something like that, and there was like rumors that there are angels above, and it was reported that there are angels of whatever the battle was called, like Mam or whatever. It was some weird
okay.
French name. Um, and so the fact so like Angel of Verdun is kind of a play on Angels of whatever that World War One battle was. That's another
Okay.
reference. It's kind of nice. Like I was watching this on Amazon Video, and I don't know if you noticed this, but Amazon Video, if you pause it, there's tons of like little like fun facts on the side that you can read.
Huh.
Um,
No, I did not
yeah,
notice
I
that.
think you really need to take advantage of that because like there are little things like the fact that Full Metal beep bleep 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 um is a reference to Full Metal Jacket. Like that was on the little side comments. They tell you things
Mm.
about the actors. Anyways, so some of a lot of they're talking. Those little side comments mentioned a lot about the World War One and World War Two cross references. But yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
continue.
They're talking about how they are opening up this other front because they want to take pressure off the Russians and the Chinese,
Yep.
which is the purpose of D-Day in World War II, was to take pressure off the Russians and open up another front to fight the Germans and take away manpower from the Russian front. Um, there's there's a lot of scenes in the original in the like first time that Tom Cruise is on the beach storming the beach with all the other soldiers. Um, there's a lot of imagery and a lot of shots that are almost like one for one with Saving Private Ryan and the beach scene in Saving Private Ryan. There's a lot of very similar shots,
Mm.
very similar things happening, and I feel like that was intentional as well. There's a little kind of nod there. Like I think specifically, there's a scene where there's a soldier in a mech that's
Ah,
like
but is
on
he a soldier?
fire.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, thank you, Paul. There's a soldier in a mech that's on fire, and it reminded me. There's a scene in Saving Private Ryan where it's at the opening scene, and they're storming the beach, and there's a soldier who's on fire with a flamethrower,
Yeah.
and then he like explodes because the flamethrower. Um, so I thought, that was referential. Obviously, there's a lot of things I love about this movie in terms of its world. I love the suits. I love the idea of the suits. I love the ships, those like airships. Those are really cool airships that
Yep.
they have in this movie.
I really like the idea that like when you drop when they drop from the ships, they have like that cord, that string. The reason I
Mm-hmm.
like it is because it really adds to like the chaos of the moment when they're all crashing into the beach. Like you
Mm-hmm.
got the alien like projectiles which have like black, street, like what do we call them? Like smoke trails behind them, whatever. And then you
Yeah.
got the strings of the people falling down and colliding into each other. And like there's so
Mm-hmm.
much cluttering the screen. I feel like it just that was a good decision because
It was a
it
chaotic. It
really
was just
helps
a
the chaos of the scene, like visually
Yeah.
represents the
I feel like
chaos.
that scene, and again, it all depends on what you're going for. This movie was more about, again, Tom Cruise's character arc than just showing the horrors of war. Because if they were just going for the horrors of war, this movie could have, of course, benefited from an R rating like Saving Private Ryan, where
Yeah.
they could have really emphasized the horrors of war. But it's fine because it's more about a character arc, and so just do PG-13 and get away with what you can.
Hmm.
Um, but it it really is a fascinating world that they built, and I almost would have liked to see more of it. I would have liked to see other things. Definitely some contrivances or some things that I thought were weird. We talked about some already in the end of the movie, but like, where are the aliens coming from? Like, they talk about them having a stupendous amount of these aliens. There's when they're talking about like the alpha, and they're like, oh, we calculate there's probably one alpha for every like 6 million normal like basic mimics, and you're like, okay, so there's a lot of these
Well, of course, is
things.
that just taken from on the planet, or is that taken from like in all of like outer space, like for every anywhere in the
That's
universe?
I assume that's just on the planet
I don't know. That's 6 million
because
mimics. That's a lot. I don't know.
well, because I assume it's just on the planet Earth because he wouldn't have any data on outer space.
True, true. But
So
it's a
it wouldn't
movie.
really. And also, there's got to be quite a few of these alphas running around. And so that part of me felt like that was a bit weird.
Okay, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
how are there, first of all, how are there so many of these
What if that
mimics?
was like a slip up in
And
his line? Like he was supposed to be like every like
every
like
6,000, yeah.
like every 0.6 million or something, and
Yeah, every 600,000, that would be far more believable. But but like, is there like a factory, or like, are they breeding? Like, how do mimics make more mimics?
that
That was my main question in
that
this
that'd be
movie.
awkward seeing Tom Cruise and I mean yeah, Cage and Rita come crashing in on the Omega site, and they just find it's a giant breeding ground for Alpha. for alpha
Yeah, there's a
wolf
bunch
wolf
of
squids,
alphas. Yeah, a bunch of wolf squids just with their tentacles all wrapped around each other.
and they're all alphas, and they get down there and they all look at them, and then like, shoot,
Yeah.
we're screwed, and they die. Or
It's
or
like,
they're all just stuck
oh.
because they're all so intensely
Yeah, they're
intertwined.
all very and there's a lot of intense squid action going on. Um but the like that was one of my big questions was like, so how do they keep making more mimics? Because like, are there factories of mimics? Are they just made by breeding? Cuz like that was one of my big things, like how do they keep up with the battlefield demands? Like, because presumably these things are getting killed by the tens of thousands because we see a lot of them
You
dying.
actually don't see a ton of them dying. You see a lot of them like getting hit by bullets, but then immediately killing the person that's attacking them. Like you see, they're
I
fairly hard to kill. Like they're hard to aim at.
But they do get they we do see them get killed though. Like, Rita kills several, Cage kills a lot.
Yeah,
We see that apparently one shotgun shell to the face will kill one apparently, which begs the question, why don't they just give all the soldiers
because
shotguns? But
they
whatever.
don't want to be close range. I mean, of course, if you shot anyone with a shotgun in the head, they would die. But yet again,
I
soldiers
mean,
don't
you
have
could argue
shotguns.
you could argue that the battle suit is probably just as easy to equip with both a shotgun and an assault rifle. I mean,
I mean,
especially since shot
probably somehow have customizable suits because some people had like rocket launchers and others had like guns and
some
others,
people had like lasers. Like Rita had those like
flamethrowers.
energy
Yeah,
weapons. Did you notice Rita had like an energy weapon? I'm like, why doesn't everybody have those
because
energy weapons? Because those things.
she's the angel of Verdun, and they're expensive, and frankly, she deserves it.
Also, the gunship has an energy machine gun of some type. It's
Yeah,
like,
it
oh, that,
does.
that
It
that's
does.
that seems useful. Um, Maybe we could have a lot of those.
Paul, you're just the ultimate soldier. You're like, ooh, that looks really nice and expensive. I'll take that, and that's the best. I want that. And you're just like shopping. You got like a tank. You got like a drop ship. You got like laser weapons. And you're like, all right, I'm
Yeah,
good.
I show up on the battlefield and I've got a hover tank with like a nuclear missile strapped to the back.
Where's Paul? You see that giant cloud of explosions over there? He's plowing his way through enemy ranks. Yeah, that's him.
It doesn't even matter that they can see
Is that a
it doesn't
lightsaber
matter
he
that they
has?
can see the future. It really, that was another thing, is like, okay, like,
Atomically
so
powered tank.
the mimics can see the future, and it's like, oh, an enemy who knows the future can't lose. And I was like, really? I was like, well, what if we just carpet bombed your entire
Well,
area?
what if was it Malcolm from Jurassic Park comes in and says, actually there's too many complex components for this theory of that humanity is just way too complex, and as much as you can know the future, something different is bound to happen every time you restart the game.
Yeah, or something like that.
Before you
It's
know it,
like,
dinosaurs are coming out of the sand and eating
yeah,
everyone.
and then the dinosaurs are killing the
And then the
mimics because,
velociraptors just kill everyone and
yeah,
develop their
exactly.
own language and weapon system
Yep.
and
But the
continue to conquer the whole universe.
exactly. And in a way, the raptors are the real mimics. But the like, what if we just nuked you? Then what do you do? Now you're dead because now you were just nuked. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, mimics. But
Yeah,
like,
honestly,
what?
they probably should have just done that because of all the technology and like nuclear weapons we have, and taking for granted that most of Europe, the center of Europe, is probably uninhabited by humans because either they're all dead
Because,
or moved
yeah,
away. You
exactly.
could probably safely nuke or just carpet bomb.
That's probably what really happened in this movie, is like, if Tom Cruise hadn't killed the Omega, the United States and the Russians kind of had this like probably under the table deal where they're like, so if this fails, we're not going to tell any of the Europeans, but like, if this fails and then the mimics like immediately take over the United Kingdom right afterwards, we're just gonna carpet nuke the whole freaking thing, okay? And the Russians are like, okay, deal, we'll use all of our
Yes,
nukes too.
and you see like America going like, yes, we can use it, and then you see all these happy people hitting all these buttons they've wanted to hit forever. Like, yes, I can hit these buttons now.
There's just this cloud of missiles and warheads flying into Europe, and then poor.
But of course, the mimics
Or-
would know that, and so they would restart the day.
But then they'd reset the day, and then they would just nuke them again, and then they'd reset the day, and then it would just nuke them again.
Hey, but I mean,
It's like,
if it takes, Tom Cruise like 10,000 deaths, I think the mimics will continue to die until they realize how to stop these nukes. They have to swim their butts off get to America and in what
They
in
have to
a
swim
few
the
hours
entire
in
length of
in
the
24
Atlantic
hours in 24
Ocean.
hours,
Yes.
and then same for get over to Russia and find where all the nukes are coming from. Or
Yes.
they could just like, screw it, this planet's messed up, let's just leave.
It's like they're willing to nuke an entire continent to get rid of us. I guess it's not worth it. Um, the it is kind of funny, like some of the elements where it's like, why aren't there more artillery pieces in this movie? Like, why don't we see bombardment? But I get we don't need to see
Well,
that. Like, I get
it's
this is all
hinted
just
with this bombardment because when you see the dropships flying over the cliffs of Dover, you see
Mhm.
battleships off in the distance, and so it's
We do see battleships, but like it would be fun for me to see. Like, I'm interested in seeing like a high altitude aircraft
yeah.
because we see a lot of
I want to
helicopters.
see like how it should have ended, and seeing like Cage and Rita being like, all right, but we need a ship to get to Paris in time, and then one of them's like, what the heck? Why a drop ship? Get like the stealth bomber or something. Like just get way
Yeah,
up
it's like
there
we'll just get some really big parachutes
and
for our
just bomb it.
suits. It'll be fine.
Like, all right, drop all the bombs on the Louvre. Like, okay, look at, okay, we did it. Do you think that did it? They're looking down. I don't know. Let's do it again. Okay, here we go. Dude, that did
It's
it.
like
I guess gotta.
yeah, they managed to hijack. I guess they could have just as easily hijacked really any number of things. I guess at this point,
Yeah.
I mean, she's like apparently pulls a lot of weight. Like they just find a nuclear submarine. They're like, okay, we're gonna take over this submarine
And
and we're gonna drop a
nuke the
nuke on
Louvre.
Paris. Like everybody's gonna be really mad at us. But once they see that all the mimics magically die everywhere in the world, then they'll hopefully forgive us and it'll be fine. Okay? Okay. But that was another funny thing was in the scene with the general, and they're like, what if you did believe us, and what if we were able to convince you that there really is this Omega thing, and it's in Paris or in the Louvre, and the general's like, if I really believe that such a creature existed, then I would like
Carpet bomb it.
gather all of my get all of my bombers and all
Carpet
of
bombing
my
out of
missiles,
existence.
and I would bomb it out of existence, and it's like, and I was like, yeah. That's a great idea. Why don't you just do that?
Because he doesn't believe is the thing.
No, but like,
He's like
but
Pharaoh.
like
He
the thing
hardens
is
he-
that
he's like
then,
Pharaoh. He
then,
hardens his heart. Oh my gosh.
oh gosh, oh gosh. Anyway, so then, but Tom Cruise is like, General, this isn't a thing that you're readily equipped to fight. And I'm like, oh, but you are Tom Cruise. You're readily equipped to fight this thing, and with your little band of misfit soldiers.
He's like, yes, I don't even need a suit.
Oh, it's like just nuke them. Just
Yeah.
nuke them from orbit.
Yeah, actually, that would have been a great deal. Like, hey, okay, you nuke the Louvre, and if nothing happens, you can like arrest us and put us away, and that's fine. But if all Americans die, then you have to.
That's exactly what would not have happened, unfortunately, because it probably would take a little bit more convincing to get the general to nuke the Louvre.
Yeah,
But
or
yes,
at least
that,
bomb
that
it with
is
a lot of bombs or something.
You think that they could have figured something out, like, because you wouldn't even need to nuke
Hey,
it, because
if you,
I mean,
yeah.
I feel like ultimately what you would do is you wouldn't nuke it. What you'd do is you'd launch a couple bunker buster tomahawks or something, like some cruise missiles, and they would penetrate into the Louvre and detonate. And what's really great is because apparently the mimic overlord, the wolf squid boss thing, the Omega, which is like, how does this thing move, by the way? Because if they landed in Germany, obviously this thing moved at some point, but this does not exactly look like a mobile thing.
Hey, well,
I don't know.
It evidently did move. Maybe it has a ton of like really long, stringy legs underneath and just kind of buries itself down in the ground.
Maybe. But so this giant mimic thing which moved into the Louvre without totally destroying the glass pyramid that's over the top of it, or also without being noticed by surveillance and satellite recon and whatever else. This thing. So they go to Paris, and this thing is there. Why? It does frustrate me. Like, could have just hit it with something. I don't know, because especially since it's underwater explosions are actually much more devastating than above water explosions because the shock wave is way more deadly underwater. like a shockwave from an explosion underwater will kill you like 4 times further away
What if
than.
like the grenades exploded before it went inside the Omega, and so now it's just malfunctioning, and it resets the day like every like 5 minutes, and you can't do anything about it forever.
And everybody's aware of it though
Well,
too.
only the person who has the blood would be aware of it. So only Tom Cruise. He'd probably kill himself.
So
And
Tom
he
Cruise.
couldn't kill himself. He'd go insane.
Oh, that would be horrible.
Oh,
That would be
I have
awful.
to get to the Louvre in 5 minutes. Help.
Uh, but so they kill the Omega, and then everybody's fine, and then it miraculously resets the day for no
Oh,
reason.
because all the blood went inside of him.
Yeah,
Last
but like,
second.
but the whole deal is that even though he has the blood, that just gives him control. The blood doesn't reset it; it's the Omega that resets it every time that he dies. But somehow the blood of the Omega after it's dead allows him to reset the day, which begs the question: does he now have the
Well,
power to reset the
he
day
actually,
somehow? I don't know.
whoever has the blood has the power to reset the day. That's what they say. You know,
No, what they say is that the alpha, what happens is it's like a central nervous system.
yeah.
And so then when an alpha dies, it automatically triggers the omega to reset the day. The omega is the one with the power to reset the day. But then when he gets the blood from the alpha, it acts as though he is now an alpha because he has the blood from the alpha. And so now he acts in the same capacity that an alpha does, that when he dies, it sends the signal to the omega to reset the day. And then
Which they mentioned that
but
they say that humanity is like the only exception to this world conquering organism.
conveniently,
Yes, which of
yes,
course it's a movie, and that's what they decided to do. So okay,
yeah,
it's in this universe that is the way it is. Okay.
yeah.
Um,
So that's
yeah.
that's all
So,
thing.
so I guess
That's all fine and good.
we would have to assume that one, the Omega was still functioning to some sort for a short time after it exploded, and same with Tom Cruise, that he probably was not dead. He was probably dying, even though he has a hole in his chest. Easy way for the blood to get in, though, maybe. Um,
Yeah.
so the thing that would happen, of course, I think actually in the book, I could be wrong. I feel like I looked it up once, but like, I think he dies in the end. Like he actually dies. But because it's a movie.
Rita dies in the end of the book
Oh, okay. Okay, because I just feel like because it's a movie, they decided to bring everyone back. Um,
because it has to be
which
happy.
I love the ending to this movie. It's like so perfect. How it just like cuts away so short like that at the end. Fades to black when she's like, how do I have something on my face? And
Well, she does not say that at the end of the movie.
what does she say? She says something and then he laughs.
He says something like, "Can I help you?" or whatever, because now he's an officer. He's not just like a random soldier wandering in.
Yeah.
He deserves respect because he's wearing his
Yeah.
colonel's uniform or major
Yeah.
or whatever he is.
Um,
So
but yeah, and then he laughs and then it cuts away, and I'm glad they kept it that way, that they all came alive again, because then it's the point of salvation for all of humanity. That message is brought to more realization. You have the continuation of this relationship that you kind of want to see, but at the same time don't really need to see. Just like the end of The Incredibles, you don't need to see them fight off the Underminer.
yeah, we don't need to see a sequel to The Incredibles.
We don't. But alas, people want money.
Yes, unfortunately, those those darn people and their love of money.
That's what it's all about, right? It's all
As I sit on my desk and feel guilty about myself because there's actually a large stack of bills next to me. Just shh. It's not for making sequels. It's just from.
my love of money.
Okay, I confess, we're getting paid off. Yes, make all the sequels. Make them all. Make them all.
Make them all. Make them all. Oh,
I expect my check, Disney, and whoever made this movie. I don't know.
Ooh. Who did make this movie?
Tom Cruise by himself with an iPhone made this movie.
I'm gonna look this up.
So yeah, that's Edge of Tomorrow. One thing I want to address that was the first thing on my notes, but since we're going through this backwards, will be probably the last major thing we talk about. The big criticism that I sometimes hear talked about in this movie, or the criticism I hear most often, is this movie is too similar to Groundhog Day.
Be-
This movie is not similar to Groundhog Day,
The
okay?
fact,
I get it. The day repeats in Groundhog Day. This movie has a very clear explanation for why the day is repeating. It's because the aliens have this time travel sort of technology thing. You could argue that's silly or contrived, but whatever. At least it's an explanation. And I don't think it's terribly silly. Whatever. It works in the context of this movie. And, like, yes, the day is repeating, but it's for a completely different reason, in a completely different genre of movie, in a completely different setting. Nothing about this movie is similar to Groundhog Day, other than, yes, he does live the same day
and
over and
the
over
main
again.
the main character begins selfish and ends selfless. That's another thing that is similar. Um,
Yes,
and there's
but
a woman
like
he loves.
Okay, but these are now starting to get into
Very
like common movie things. Like,
broad.
of course, the main character is a better person at the end of the movie than he is at the beginning. Like, that's like almost every movie. Of course, there's a love interest. That's so many movies.
Yeah.
But like, when people tell me this movie is just like, oh, it's just Groundhog Day. What? It's completely different. It's like, okay,
Look at him, Paul.
okay. Imagine Die Hard. So I know that Die Hard wasn't the first action movie, but it was a action movie that sort of set the precedent. Like it was the first modern action movie, one might say.
Huh.
Like the original Die Hard sort of changed the way action movies were made. So you have Die Hard, and it's like this really cool action movie, and then like years later, The Matrix gets made. And it's like an action movie, but it's got this whole different concept behind it and like why it is the way it is. When people saw The Matrix, they didn't go, oh, this is just Die Hard. No one on Earth said that. And those movies, oh my goodness. Like, just because it has one thing similar doesn't mean that everybody has to be like, oh my goodness, this is the same thing. I'm sure that Groundhog Day wasn't actually the first piece of media to have a repeating day thing. It might have been the first movie, but I'd be willing to bet that there's probably been like books or stories or things written before it that had, a repeating day.
Oh my gosh,
story.
Star Trek is just like Star Wars. They're both in space. They both have starships. They both have lasers.
Oh my goodness. It's all the same thing. It's like, okay, if this movie and Groundhog Day are the same movie, then like everything is the same movie.
Oh my gosh, Star Wars is a movie. Star Trek is a movie.
It's on film. They both have the word star in the title. It's just awful.
Star Trek Wars. That should be another movie. Come on.
Well, that's actually from Futurama. The Star Trek Wars is the great battle between the Star Trek fans.
Oh, really?
Because in Futurama, Star Trek in like the mid 2300s or something becomes like this super religion where there's like the worship of Star Trek, and then there's like these holy wars. They're the Star Trek wars. And then there was also the Star Wars Trek, and that was a big migration of Star Wars fans.
Wow. That's great.
Anyway.
We should probably end this podcast. It's getting a little long.
It is quite long. The final thoughts on this movie. I really like this movie. It's got some contrivances in it, but overall, the shenanigans are just super fun, and it's a very fun concept, even if the third act starts to get a little... it starts to be a little contrived, but I really like this movie. Obviously recommend it. Thumbs up is my rating.
Same. I would probably, this is easily in my top 10 favorite movies.
Okay, I would not put it that high.
Of course, you've seen
but
a lot
yes.
more like classic and like well put together films than I have.
Yes,
I don't know.
I'm much more educated on film than you have.
Yes, but for me at least, I would even say this is probably above 10th place in my top 10 favorite movies. But
okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, that's a fair thing to say. So, very good movie, and that's the show.
Woohoo!
You can follow us on Twitter at Shouting Screens, or watch us on YouTube if you prefer to listen to us there. Thank you, everybody, for listening to episode 6 of the Shouting at Screens podcast, and I hope you'll join us again next week for more discussions about movies and, most importantly, coffee.
Yes.
This has been Paul Hine,
This has been Paul Kaufman.
and thank you for listening.